God is always in control. Even when we feel like everything is slipping through our fingers. Trusting Him doesn't mean giving up. It means stepping into His divine plan. Too often we rely on our own strength, forgetting that our power has limits. But God's power is infinite. When we surrender our situation to Him, it's not a sign of weakness. It's an act of faith. Letting go isn't losing control. It's giving control to the one who sees the bigger picture. The one who already has the solution to every problem we face. God is always in control. Even when we feel like everything is out of our hands. Life can sometimes feel overwhelming. Situations arise that make us question how things will ever work out. The challenges we face, whether in our relationships, finances, health, or careers, can leave us feeling helpless, uncertain, and afraid. We try to plan, strategize, and fix things on our own. But the more we push, the more we realize how little control we truly have. It's in these moments when life feels heavy and chaotic that we must remember God is always in control. There's a peace that comes when you remind yourself of this truth. You don't have to figure everything out on your own. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. The same God who created the heavens and the earth is holding your situation in the palm of His hand. He sees the end from the beginning. He knows what's best for you, even when you can't see it yourself. What may feel like chaos to you is not chaos to God. What seems like an impossible situation to you is an opportunity for Him to display His power and His glory. The challenge for us is letting go. As humans, we like to be in control. We like to have a plan, to know what's coming next, and to feel like we're steering the ship. But the truth is, real peace and real progress come when we're willing to surrender that control to God. Surrender doesn't mean giving up or sitting back passively. It means trusting God enough to take your hands off the wheel and allow Him to guide you. It means believing that He knows better than you do and that His ways are higher than your way. Think about the times in your life when you've tried to handle everything on your own. Maybe you worked tirelessly to fix a relationship, but nothing seemed to change. Or you spent sleepless nights worrying about a problem only to find that worrying didn't solve anything. These moments remind us of our limitations. But here's the good news. While we are limited, God is limitless. Where our strength ends, His begins. When you let God take over your situation, you're inviting His wisdom, His power, and His peace into your life. You're saying, God, I trust You. I don't understand everything that's happening, but I know You're in control. I know You're working behind the scenes for my good. This kind of trust is what opens the door for miracles. It allows God to move in ways that you could never orchestrate on your own. Sometimes we get frustrated because things aren't happening on our timeline. We pray, we wait, and we wonder if God is even listening. But remember this. God's timing is always perfect. He may not come through the way you expect or when you expect, but He will always come through. What looks like a delay is often God's way of preparing you for something greater. What seems like a setback is actually a setup for His bigger plan. Even in the most difficult moments, God is working. He can take what was meant for harm and turn it around for good. He can bring beauty from ashes and joy from sorrow. There is no situation too far gone, no problem too big, and no challenge too great for Him to handle. When you trust Him, you're not just handing over your struggles, you're inviting Him to transform them. So today, let go of the need to control everything. Release the worry, the fear, and the anxiety. Trust that God is in control, even when life feels uncertain. Remember, He's the same God who parted the Red Sea, who fed thousands with a few loaves and fish, and who calmed the storm with just a word. If He can do all that, He can handle your situation too. Let Him take over and watch as He works everything out for your good and His glory. Our human strength has limits, but God's power is infinite. We often live under the illusion that we can do it all, handle every problem, overcome every challenge, and push through every difficulty. Society tells us to rely on our strength, to push harder, and to figure things out on our own. But the truth is, we were never meant to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. There's only so much we can do, only so far we can go before we hit the limits of our human strength. And that's okay, because where our strength ends, God's power begins. There are moments in life when we find ourselves exhausted, overwhelmed, and completely out of options. It could be a health crisis, a financial struggle, or a relationship that feels like it's falling apart. We pour all our energy into fixing the problem, only to feel like we're running in circles. That's because human strength, no matter how determined we are, has its limits. We're finite beings with finite abilities. But God, on the other hand, is infinite. His power knows no boundaries, and His resources are limitless. Think about the times when you felt like you've reached the end of your rope. Maybe you were physically drained, emotionally broken, or mentally exhausted. Those moments can feel like defeat, but they're actually opportunities for God to step in and show His power. When you've done all you can and it's still not enough, that's when God's strength becomes most evident. He's not limited by the things that limit us. He doesn't get tired, overwhelmed, or unsure of what to do next. His power is constant, unwavering, and perfectly sufficient for every need. The Bible is full of examples of God's power being made perfect in human weakness. Think about David standing before Goliath. By human standards, David didn't stand a chance. He was young, inexperienced, and armed with nothing but a sling and a few stones. But David wasn't relying on his own strength. He knew that God's power was infinite and that the battle belonged to Him. And with one small stone, guided by God's hand, David defeated the giant. It wasn't human strength that won the victory. It was God's power working through someone who trusted Him completely. The same is true for us. When we stop trying to do everything in our own strength and start leaning on God's power, we open the door for Him to work in miraculous ways. Surrendering to His power doesn't mean giving up. It means acknowledging that we can't do it alone and that we don't have to. It's about saying, God, I trust You. I need Your help. I'm relying on Your strength, not my own. That kind of faith moves mountains. God's power isn't just available for the big, dramatic moments in life. It's there for the everyday struggles too. When you're tired from a long day, when you're trying to parent your children with patience, when you're dealing with stress at work, God's strength is there for you. He invites us to lean on Him in every moment, big or small. The Bible says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. That means His power shines brightest when we admit our limitations and depend on Him. Sometimes we resist leaning on God's power because we think we should be able to handle things on our own. We feel like asking for help, whether from God or anyone else, is a sign of weakness. But the truth is, there's no shame in admitting we need God's help. In fact, it's the wisest thing we can do. God created us to rely on Him, to live in relationship with Him, and to draw strength from His infinite power. No matter what you're facing today, know that you don't have to face it alone. You don't have to rely solely on your own strength, because God's power is more than enough. He can carry what you can't. He can solve what you can't figure out. He can bring peace to what feels chaotic and provide hope where there seems to be none. His power is infinite, and it's available to you. When you trust in Him, you're not just acknowledging your limits. You're stepping into the limitless power of the Almighty God. Surrendering is not a sign of weakness, it's an act of faith. In our culture, surrender is often misunderstood. It's seen as giving up, admitting defeat, or backing down when the going gets tough. We're taught to hold on, to push through, and to rely on ourselves no matter what. But in the context of faith, surrender has a completely different meaning. It's not about quitting. It's about trusting. Surrendering to God is one of the most powerful and courageous decisions you can make because it requires you to let go of control and place your trust in something greater than yourself. When you surrender to God, you're not giving up on life. You're giving Him permission to take the lead. You're saying, God, I can't do this on my own. I don't have all the answers and I don't need to because I trust that you do. That's not weakness, that's faith. It takes incredible strength to admit that you're not in control and to willingly hand over the reins to God. It's not about failure. It's about faith in the one who never fails. Surrender is an act of faith because it acknowledges God's sovereignty. It recognizes that He is in control, even when life feels uncertain or overwhelming. When you surrender, you're trusting that God sees the bigger picture, that He knows what's best for you, and that His plans are better than anything you could imagine. It's about releasing the need to micromanage every detail of your life, and instead allowing God to guide your steps. There's a profound peace that comes with surrender. When you hold on tightly to control, you also hold on to anxiety, fear, and stress. You carry the weight of trying to figure everything out, trying to make everything work, and trying to be strong enough on your own. But when you surrender, you lay all of that down at God's feet. You're no longer striving to do it all in your own strength, because you've placed your trust in the one whose strength is infinite. Surrendering doesn't mean you stop trying or that you become passive. It means you do your part and trust God to do His. It's about taking the steps you can take while leaving the outcome in His hands. For example, you can apply for a job, but you trust God with the result. You can work to improve a relationship, but you trust Him to soften hearts and bring healing. You can pray for a breakthrough in your health, but you trust His timing and His process. Surrender isn't inactivity, it's active faith in God's ability to work all things together for good. One of the reasons we resist surrender is fear. We fear losing control, fear that things won't go the way we want, or fear that God's plan might look different from our own. But here's the truth. God's plans are always better. He sees what we can't see. What looks like a setback to us might be a setup for something greater. What feels like a loss might be the beginning of a breakthrough. Surrendering to God is a declaration of trust in His goodness, His wisdom, and His love. The Bible is full of examples of people who surrendered to God and saw His faithfulness in action. Think of Abraham, who surrendered his plans and followed God's call to an unknown land. Think of Moses, who surrendered his fears and doubts to lead God's people out of Egypt. Think of Mary, who surrendered her future and said, "Let it be to me according to your word." Each of these acts of surrender required faith, and each one resulted in God's glory being revealed. When you surrender, you're not giving up control, you're placing it in the hands of the one who can handle it far better than you ever could. You're not admitting defeat, you're stepping into victory because God's power is made perfect in our weakness. Whatever you're holding on to today, consider letting it go. Surrender it to God. Whether it's a situation you can't control, a dream you're afraid to let go of, or a burden that feels too heavy, trust that God can handle it. Surrendering to God is not a one-time decision. It's a daily choice. Every morning you can wake up and say, "God, I trust you. I surrender this day to you. Lead me, guide me, and have your way in my life." It's a choice to live in faith, knowing that God is in control and that His plans for you are good. Surrender is not a sign of weakness. It's an act of faith that invites God's power, peace, and provision into your life. And when you surrender, you'll discover that His way is always worth it. God sees what you can't see. Life often presents us with moments of uncertainty, where the path ahead seems unclear and our plans fall apart. In those moments, it's natural to feel lost, frustrated, or even afraid. We focus on what's in front of us, the problems, the obstacles, the unanswered questions. But while we see only what's immediately visible, God sees the bigger picture. He sees beyond the present moment, beyond the confusion, and into the future He has already prepared for us. One of the most comforting truths about God is that His perspective is limitless. While we're caught up in the here and now, He sees the end from the beginning. He sees how every piece of our lives fits together like a puzzle, even when some of those pieces feel completely out of place to us. What we see as random events or painful detours, God sees as necessary steps toward the fulfillment of His purpose for our lives. Think about driving through dense fog. You can only see a few feet ahead, so you drive cautiously, uncertain of what's beyond. But imagine if someone were above the fog with a clear view of the entire road. They could guide you, assuring you that the path is safe and that you're heading in the right direction. That's what it's like to trust God. He's above the fog of our circumstances. He knows where the road leads, even when we can't see it. There are times when life doesn't make sense. Doors close unexpectedly, opportunities slip away, relationships come to an end. It's easy to question why these things happen, especially when you've worked hard or prayed fervently for a particular outcome. But just because you don't understand it now doesn't mean God isn't working behind the scenes. He might be protecting you from something you can't see. He might be redirecting you to something better, or He might be preparing you for a blessing that requires patience and faith to receive. The Bible reminds us of this truth in Proverbs 3:5-6, which says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths." Trusting God means accepting that His vision is greater than ours. It means letting go of the need to have all the answers and believing that His plan is perfect, even when we don't understand it. When you face uncertainty, remember that God is not surprised by anything that happens. He sees the challenges ahead, and He also sees the victory that's waiting for you. He knows the blessings He's prepared, and He knows how to guide you to them. Trusting Him doesn't mean you'll always understand His ways, but it does mean you can have peace, knowing that His ways are higher than yours. God's perspective is infinite. What you see as a setback, He sees as a setup for something greater. What feels like a loss, He sees as an opportunity for growth. Trust that He's leading you, even when the path isn't clear, because He sees what you can't see and knows exactly what you need. Your obstacles are opportunities for God to show His glory. Life often presents us with challenges that seem insurmountable, situations that test our patience, strength, and faith. It's natural to wonder why these obstacles come our way. Why does life feel so hard at times? Why do doors close, problems arise, or storms suddenly appear? But what if those very obstacles are not just roadblocks? What if they are divine opportunities for God to reveal His power, His faithfulness, and His glory in your life? Throughout Scripture, we see time and time again how God uses obstacles to demonstrate His greatness. Take the story of Moses and the Israelites standing before the Red Sea. To the human eye, it looked like an impossible situation. Trapped between the sea and the advancing Egyptian army, there was no way out. But in that very moment, when it seemed like defeat was inevitable, God parted the waters, allowing his people to walk through on dry ground. What seemed like an obstacle became an opportunity for God to show his glory in a miraculous way. In the same way, the obstacles in your life are not the end of the story. There are moments for God to step in and do what only he can do. When you face a challenge that's bigger than your strength, it's a chance for God to show that his power is greater than any problem. When you encounter a situation that feels hopeless, it's an opportunity for God to remind you that with him, nothing is impossible. Sometimes we see obstacles as punishments or signs that we're on the wrong path. But more often they're setups for breakthroughs. God allows challenges to refine us, to strengthen our faith, and to prepare us for the blessings he has in store. Those obstacles force us to stop relying on ourselves and start depending on him. They remind us that we need his guidance, his provision, and his strength to overcome. Consider David as he faced Goliath. To everyone else, Goliath was an insurmountable obstacle. But to David, who trusted in God, Goliath was an opportunity to display God's power. When David defeated the giant with just a sling and a stone, it was clear to everyone that the victory didn't come from human strength, but from God's hand. Your own Goliaths, those big, intimidating challenges, are opportunities for God to work through you in ways that will leave no doubt about his glory. Obstacles also serve as testimonies. When God brings you through a difficult time, your story becomes a source of hope and inspiration for others. Your triumph over adversity is a reflection of his power and faithfulness. People see what God has done in your life, and it draws them closer to him. Whatever you're facing today, don't be discouraged by the size of the obstacle. Instead, look at it as an opportunity for God to show his glory. Trust that he's with you, working on your behalf. When you step aside and let him take control, you'll witness his power in ways you never imagined. What feels like a challenge now could be the very thing that brings you closer to his purpose and reveals his greatness to the world. Peace comes when you release the burden. Life can often feel overwhelming. The weight of responsibilities, expectations, and unforeseen challenges can pile up, leaving us feeling exhausted, stressed, and unsure of how to move forward. We try to carry it all, worrying about tomorrow, replaying yesterday, and trying to control things far beyond our reach. But peace isn't found in carrying the burden. It's found in releasing it, in letting go, and placing it in God's hands. When you hold on to the burden, it's like trying to walk uphill with a heavy backpack. Each step feels harder, the weight more unbearable, and the journey endless. The more you try to carry on in your own strength, the more drained you become. But God never intended for you to live like this. He never asked you to carry the burdens of life alone. In fact, he invites you to bring those burdens to him. In Matthew 11:28, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." That's a promise of peace, but it requires an action from us. Releasing what we're holding on to. Releasing the burden means trusting God with the things you can't control. It's not about ignoring your problems or pretending they don't exist. Instead, it's about recognizing that you don't have to figure it all out on your own. When you surrender your worries, fears, and anxieties to God, you make room for his peace to fill your heart. You're saying, "God, I trust you to handle this. I know you have a plan, even when I can't see it." Letting go isn't easy. It requires faith. It means giving up your need to control the outcome and believing that God's plan is better than anything you could orchestrate. It's a daily decision to release the weight you're carrying and place it at his feet. And when you do, you'll find that peace begins to replace the stress. Think about how you feel after you've shared a heavy burden with a trusted friend or family member. There's a sense of relief, of not being alone in what you're facing. Now, imagine that multiplied infinitely when you bring your burdens to God. He doesn't just listen, He takes the weight off your shoulders. He provides comfort, guidance, and strength to face whatever comes your way. Peace isn't the absence of problems. It's the presence of trust in the one who holds your future. It's knowing that even in the midst of uncertainty, God is in control. When you release the burden, you free yourself from the constant cycle of worry and striving. You create space for God's peace to settle into your soul, a peace that surpasses all understanding. So today, take a moment to release what's weighing you down, whether it's fear about the future, regret about the past, or stress about the present. Give it to God. Let Him carry it for you. When you release the burden, you'll discover that peace was waiting for you all along. When you let go of control, you make room for miracles. So often in life, we hold on tightly to our plans, our expectations, and our vision of how things should be. We feel responsible for making everything happen, for ensuring every detail aligns with our desires. But that need for control can limit us. When our hands are full trying to manage everything, we leave no space for God to step in and do what only He can do. True miracles happen not when we insist on control, but when we release it and trust God to take over. Letting go of control is not a sign of failure. It's an act of faith. It's an acknowledgement that while we have limitations, God does not. He sees what we can't see. He knows the end from the beginning, and He works in ways that are far beyond anything we could imagine or orchestrate. But for God to move, we have to step aside. We have to stop trying to manipulate every outcome and instead invite Him to take control of the situation. Take the story of Peter walking on water. When Peter saw Jesus walking on the waves, he asked to come to him. With Jesus' permission, Peter stepped out of the boat and began walking on water, a miraculous moment. But as soon as Peter shifted his focus to the wind and waves, trying to control his fear and rely on his own understanding, he began to sink. It wasn't until he cried out for Jesus to save him that the miracle resumed. The lesson here is clear. When we let go of control and fix our eyes on God, we step into the realm where miracles happen. Control can often stem from fear. Fear of failure, fear of the unknown, or fear that things won't turn out the way we hope. But fear keeps us tied to our limited perspective. It keeps us from trusting God fully. Letting go requires faith. Faith that even if things don't go according to our plans, God's plans are better. It's about surrendering our need to understand everything and choosing to believe that God is working for our good even when we can't see it. When we release control, we position ourselves to receive what God has in store for us. Consider the feeding of the 5,000. A young boy offered his small lunch, 5 loaves and 2 fish. It wasn't much, but he let go of what he had, trusting it in Jesus' hands. Jesus took that small offering, blessed it, and multiplied it to feed thousands. The miracle happened because someone let go of what little they had, trusting Jesus to do the rest. The same principle applies to us. When we release control, whether it's over our relationships, careers, finances, or futures, we allow